What is good, everybody? We're just waiting for some people to jump on here. All right, welcome in, everybody. This is Nick. I am the communications coordinator for IP3. I'm going to pretend like I'm not nervous. We're jumping on due to some technical difficulties. But today we have an interview with our Executive Director, Asa Wright. I'm going to go ahead and bring them in here shortly. But before I do, we'll just kind of give you a rundown of Indigenous Peoples Power Project. The Indigenous Peoples Power Project is a nonprofit 501c3 nonviolent direct action training and support network advancing Indigenous communities' ability to exercise their inherent right to environmental justice, cultural livelihood, and self-determination. Formed in 2004 as a project of the Ruckus Society, IP3 graduated from NDN Collective's fiscal sponsorship cohort and became a nonprofit in 2020. We continue to work across Turtle Island with communities that are most vulnerable to threats of ecological devastation and resource exploitation, and most poised to lead solution-oriented action. Our mission is to provide nonviolent direct action training, campaign support, and community organizing tools to support Indigenous communities taking action in defense of their homelands. And give me just a sec. I think this is literally the first time I've done this. So if y'all are just joining us, welcome to the show today. This is Skoden Talks with the Homies with your temporary host, communications coordinator Nick Sanford Belgard. Let me bring Asa on here. Asa, if you want to send me a request. And give me just a moment here. Oh, here we go. Thank you, Jasha. All right, Asa, I just sent you a request. And so while we wait for Asa to join us, just to give you a little bit of background, Asa is our executive director. He was with IP3 at Standing Rock in 2016. That's how he became involved with IP3 with her actions there. A couple years later, when IP3 officially became a nonprofit, Asa started as the project coordinator and has since become the executive director. And my apologies, I am figuring this out as I go, everybody. Asa. Okay, Asa, I just sent you another invite. Hey, there he is.
Hey, Nick.
How are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to do my best here. Of course, welcome to Skoden Talks with the Homies. This is IP3 Action, Executive Director Asa Wright. And I guess we'll just start in with a question. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's good.
All right. So yeah, if you could let everybody know, like, what's your background in IP3, and even before that, maybe just give a little bit of history on yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Waklisi, Damadishki, Gapsessus Asa Wright, Iwixikni Modakni Yahuskin. Hello, good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. Good evening. My name is Asa Wright. I'm Klamath Modoc in Yahuskin from Southern Oregon, or Chiloquin, Oregon. Grateful to be sharing some time with you all today. Yeah, I've been with IP3 since Standing Rock. That's where I got to know the organization and meet folks who were involved with IP3. And there was an art tent that was there at Standing Rock, and that's how I became involved, because I love everything art. Art feeds me, and is what I would love to be doing with 100% of my time, honestly. So yeah, I got involved with IP3 at that time. And then just something in me sparked at that art tent, and I didn't ever want to leave it behind. So I was like, how do I continue to cultivate this relationship? How do I stay involved? And like, what can I offer? How can I be supportive of this group or this network? And so from there, I just like befriended some of the folks who were already current trainers, and was like, got to the point where I was just bugging them constantly of like, how do I stay involved? What can I do more? Like, where's the next thing gonna be? You know? And so it was just really um, continuing to like voice my interests and tell people and show people that I wanted to be here. And then so in 2018, IP3 was hiring a contracted coordinator to get all of their pieces in place to actually um, make IP3 an actual nonprofit, 501c3. So I applied for that job, and thankfully, all the mix match skills that I have were all perfect for this job. And so that was only supposed to be a 1-year contract. And then it turned into a 2-year contract. And then in June of 2020, we got our 501c3. And then they needed to hire an executive director. And I reluctantly stepped in. I actually refused the position, which I know people are like, what? What did you do that for? Um, I just never saw myself in an executive director position or role. You know, like I'm a behind the scenes guy. Like uh, I love, you know, working hard, and like the benefits that I reap are like seeing people be able to use something or do something that I was part of. And in my mind, like an executive director is like the face and voice of an organization. And I didn't feel comfortable with that. And and so I was reluctant to actually accept the position, but
Mm.
they wore me down.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. In fact, that's kind of a good intro into the next question. Like in that process, you know, making the decision on whether or not you would accept the role as executive director, are there like certain people or places or just events that kind of influenced your decision?
Yeah, I mean everybody. I draw inspiration from everywhere. Right now, like that shining star for me is my kiddo. They're in college, and so they just inspire me every single day. Um, but yeah, definitely, you know, there are elders in my life. There are you know, ceremony people in my life, two spirit elders in my life that, you know, have always always inspired me and supported me and like just really kept me going. And definitely my grandparents and my parents. And so yeah, and also just like this community that's in this network, you know, like I've been a trainer in this network before I was in a leadership role. So I was a creative resistance trainer. So I was training arts to communities, and just my fellow trainers were just like, yo, you can make this, you know, whatever it wants to be, you know, like it's a true network. So it's not just like Asa leading this thing for everybody to follow. Like it's really driven by everyone else's input, and I really love that. And so I was like, yeah, you know what? Like even though that like the role sounds intimidating, and then like the my assumptions of having to be a face and voice of an organization were really intimidating. Like I realized early on that I didn't have to like um, treat this leadership role like anybody else's that I saw doing that role. Like I could really kind of massage it into whatever it was going to be for IP3. And so my focus has always been like it's a network of people, you know,
Uh,
collectively following a vision and mission statement so that we can better support our communities. And so with that, then it kind of that intimidation dropped a little bit, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is a we organization. This is us doing this thing. This is us supporting our communities. And so that felt a lot better and definitely dropped some of the pressure that I put on myself, you know.
Right. Right. Yeah, I can actually attest to that because I know that, just through the work and the spaces that we share, staff, the training network, board of directors, it's really cool to hear you say, like this isn't a me organization. Like this organization is driven by the people who participate. And of course, the long history of IP3. So I think that's really cool that it probably makes take some of the heat off you too, considering that like, okay, well, if it's not about me and I'm truly making it about the rest of the organization, the people involved with it, then, they're going to pick up some of that work and help guide you through it, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So yeah, just I guess moving along, and here I am just kind of reading a list of questions because I literally just got these. But also you've been involved with the Two Spirit LGBT plus community, and ahead of your professional work at IP3 even. How did you get involved in founding the Portland Two Spirit Society?
Yeah, that was a long, interesting road, but definitely something that additionally fed me and kept me going in community. Um, I was actually a student at Portland State University when I first heard about my first Two Spirit Society, and back then there weren't too many, but the one that I came across was Northwest Two Spirit Society,
Mm-hmm.
and they were in Seattle. And I was just like, I have to be part of this thing. I have to see what this is about. Um, and before then, I was involved in a lot of different LGBTQI groups that were like on campus, because that's really all that really existed. There were a couple like nonprofit organizations in town, but for me, they didn't really feel community based. And at that time, Portland's a really white city. At that time, it was even more so. I feel like I've really been blessed in the last 10, 20 years to see groups of color grow in this city and like a community be thriving and supporting each other, which is just amazing to me, because I really didn't see my face represented in community when I first got here. And so that was part of the pull, specifically to go find out what Northwest Two Spirit Society was about, right? And so yeah, I ended up spending like lots of money on gas money to get back and forth from Portland to Seattle, and ended up going to a Pride um, celebration up there in Seattle one year with my little family, and met where I was like walking through the park and like just a sea of people, and there was a teepee in the distance, and I was like, oh shit, that's where I need to go. And I just like scooted on over there, and I was like, I got to meet these folks. And it was so funny to me because the first person I ended up meeting was a Klamath tribal member,
Oh,
and I
really?
was like, yo, I'm in the right spot. And so yeah, I just got to meet some of these people, and some of the people who have been my like elder leadership. I think in queer communities we have young elders, because just all the things that affect us in our lives in this world. But
Yeah.
I can't say enough praise for Brian Rainforth, Raven Heavy-Runner, and Hiram Calf-Looking. Like, they really held space for me, and really supported me. And yeah, and then after that I was just like, I found my people. Like, for the first time, I wasn't having to like explain who I was as a Native person or as a Two Spirit person. And I was just like, I can just be Asa in this space,
Yeah.
And they had evening get-togethers where they were beating, where they were eating, where they were drinking, dancing, all the things. And so drag shows, like it was just amazing. And I was like, this is where I have to be. Um, and then it gets expensive driving like every weekend up there and
Right.
being with people. So I asked them actually if I could start a chapter of Northwest Two Spirit Society, and they were like, no, we think you should go ahead and just start your own, and then let your community decide what that looks like. And so I
Yeah.
was like, hey, I'm gonna do this. And so the first time was bumpy. the first time we had a queer paper here in Portland called Just Out, and there was a classified section in that paper. And
Mhm.
so my first experience trying to like grow this group was placing an ad in the Just Out paper. And it really backfired. I got actually a lot of like hate from people, which really surprised me because, um, yeah, I thought I would get one or two people, interested, and maybe we would have a small meetup type thing. But yeah,
Mhm.
I just really got hit with people wanting to just come in and direct it,
Mhm.
which I didn't want anybody directing it. I wanted it just to be a group of people and a safe place for us to like meet and share space. And so yeah, it quickly became like to the point where I felt unsafe, and I had just had a new family, so we had an infant, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to push the pause button on this because it's just not working.
Yeah.
uh, and so I did push pause. So that was back in 2004 when I first started to set that group up, and then I put it on pause and came back to it actually in May of 2010. There was a student at Portland State University having like a little mini conference as part of their what do you call it? Like their thesis or their final project.
Mhm.
And so they put on a little mini Two Spirit conference and asked if I would be a speaker in at that conference. And so I decided like I think this is the if there's enough like interest for a conference, like there has to be enough interest to get this group going again.
Yeah.
And so um, the next month was going to be Pride Month, and I had been visibly like walking in Portland Pride since 1998 in my grass dance regalia,
Mhm.
uh, and so I knew like I'm gonna take this chance. I'm gonna put a sign up sheet together and see if anybody's interested in this. Went and spoke at the conference, and then by the time I was done speaking, the sign up sheet was full.
Oh.
and the next month for Pride Month, we actually had 34 folks walking with me in that Portland Pride, and so that was amazing. And then I was like, okay, this is it. Like this is where we start, and this is where I should have started was with the Native community.
Yeah.
And I was super terrified with that, because I wasn't hiding myself. Everybody knew who I was and all that. And you don't just magically show up with a kid and a partner. There's a process for that. But yeah, I was just like I was terrified of losing the Native community and like that culture that went along with it, ceremony that went along with it, my elders and that support network.
Yeah.
And I was pleasantly surprised because they welcomed us with open arms
That's
and were
awesome.
like, "Yeah, you're here."
Yeah. You know, I've gotten to see, some of the work that you've done just over the past, several years actually here in Portland. But for the people who aren't familiar, maybe you can kind of explain, what some of that work is, how it supports the community, and maybe kind of what it evolved into and what you guys are doing now.
Yeah, totally. I've come to know myself as like a starter of work. And I used to think that I had to do and hold all the pieces. But I quickly learned like this is my strength is when somebody is like, I really wish we had this thing, but I don't know what to do to get it started. And somehow like creators blessed me with the skills to be able to be like, okay, let's make that happen. And then me go and find all the pieces to get it moving and get it going to where I can hand it off to someone else.
Hmm.
Uh, and a lot of things around Portland Two Spirit Society happen that way, where it was like, let me get this started, let me see where it goes. And again, me not wanting to lead it, but me just wanting to be in community with it. But right off the bat, it was like defined for me. And it quickly became education is what people wanted. People wanted me to like travel and talk to their kids, talk to their staff, and really give like this overview of Two Spirit history and like how they could support Two Spirit youth or Two Spirit community in general. And so that's kind of where it took off was just yeah, education. And thankfully, again, I've had such a mix mash of skills and job experience that I was able to piece this together because I was working in public health as a health educator. So thankfully, I was able to put together a presentation and travel for a while. And then that's when the marriage right to marriage campaign came about, and
Mhm.
so we actually got a small grant um, through Two Spirit Society to start working on that. And so, yeah, it's been really directed by what the community needs are at the moment, and the community isn't shy about asking for what they need at those moments. And so it's just been like us trying to figure out how to fill those needs and be supportive and help in like creating um, a reclamation and restoration of Two Spirit identity
Yeah.
and just holding space for community.
Right. Yeah, obviously, I'd imagine, that your experience, as a two-spirit person, helps to inform your, I guess, ability to be supportive in that community and the Native community in general. But could you share a little bit maybe about some of your personal experiences as a two-spirit person and how that helps inform the work now and how you offer support to our community?
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. Like when we're looking at the history of Two Spirit roles, a lot of us were healers, were caretakers for children and elders, were matchmakers, sat on like tribal councils and did mediation. And so it's interesting to look at like the historical roles and how Two Spirit people have existed in community, and then go talk to current Two Spirit community members, because a lot of us work in public health, a lot of us are social workers, a lot of us work in the health field, and so it's kind of like we're just like Creator has molded us to be those caretakers. So yeah, it was just I feel like I'm just kind of like following along in those gifts and trying to be supportive and hold space for people. I didn't really have space for myself growing up. I didn't have this language. I really found this language, like really feel like I stumbled on all this language as I was growing up and as I was getting to like each stage of my life.
Hmm.
But like I definitely had an awareness about myself that something was different around the age of 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's when I was hanging out with other little kiddos for the first time, being involved in Indian Ed pre-K where I was from. And then around the age of 15 is when I came out for the first time. And then, yeah, in my 30s, transitioning. Um, and I think like through each kind of phase of my life, I've found something new, connected with something new in terms of my identity, and really those things, whether it's been like the public library as a teenager, or other trans folks as an adult, I've really kind of found the community that I needed in those moments. Definitely not going to sugarcoat it. It's definitely been a hard, long process, as I think for many, um, Two Spirit trans folks. It can be a hard road sometimes, but I really think that having those community supports now has definitely changed things. But I feel like our community, and I feel specifically for me, I'll talk for myself, I feel
Hmm.
kind of like a yo-yo, because it's like we get so far ahead, we get these rights to marriage, we get whatever rights, legal rights, and then community support, and then we go a couple of years and then it's a giant step back for something,
Yeah.
so it's like that right to marriage just got re-signed again, so it's like, phew, okay, what's next on the plate that we need to fight? And so um, that kind of preparedness, I think, as indigenous folks, as two-spirit folks, like we're just kind of always on edge of like, okay,
Yeah.
what's next to go through?
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like so blessed because, I have a non-binary kid and they have all these supports right now that I never had. And so to see them, be in elementary school, having a language, be through middle school, having a language, consistently, and they're a college freshman now, just having a language and awareness and support system that's been built in from the time that they came into this world.
Yeah.
It's such a blessing. It's so beautiful, and I definitely have moments where I'm like, man, I wish that I had that. And like, how much further
Yeah.
in my life could I have been if I wasn't wearing this mask to protect myself for so long?
Right. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I was kind of thinking of the last interview that you had with Sage. And oh, just a heads up, everybody. So we have heard from Sage, our normal host, found out that she had some health issues, some COVID issues in her family. So we want to send prayers out to Sage, everybody. She will be back with us. Until then, you get to see my ugly face. Hey.
Hey.
And but anyway, yeah, I was just kind of thinking on some of the experiences that you were sharing on your last interview, and some of the challenges that I guess our generations had to experience. Your generation obviously had to experience in finding that identity and finding yourself. And then one thing that you shared I thought was really cool is that these younger generations now are really coming up and just having this ultimate confidence, and then also having like support systems to really help in their journey and their understanding. But what would you say for a younger two-spirit, generations and finding themselves and their identities and discovering, that part of themselves? Like, are there any like words of wisdom that you could offer up?
Yeah, I think just keep doing you, keep growing and exploring. I think that's one thing that I would definitely let people know is that when we talk about gender and sexuality in the Two-Spirit community, we always really talk about the fluidity of our genders, the fluidity of our sexuality. And so I feel like don't be so quick to put yourself in a box. And I think that, I'm definitely seeing that that young folks are being more fluid with that, and I love that. And again, I wish I could have had that in my younger years, um, just because I think that it would have been so. I think I would have been further along in knowing and loving myself than I am now. And so, yeah, just build community around yourself. Find the community that feels good to you and that fits you, and then just know that like things grow and change as you grow and change. So when you're feeling stuck, that's just a temporary moment. And then also like I love the I feel like when I was doing some of this work in my younger years that I was really kind of sitting on the fence of like being able to have this view, right, of like my elders over here and the ones that came before me,
Mm-hmm.
and like knowing the history of how they existed and how they had to exist so that they could live. And then on this side, I was starting to see this younger generation who was like finding themselves and coming out at 13 and 12 and 10, which was just blowing my mind at the time, right? And now it's like we're so far forward that these kids aren't having coming out stories anymore. They're just existing as who they are, which is so beautiful to me.
Yeah, so
Um, but I think that sometimes we forget to pause and look back at what our elders went through. And so, to be thinking about, how our elders had to exist, maybe wearing specific colors or clothing or getting, specific tattoos in different placements to be able to recognize each other and
yeah.
having to meet in private or in secluded areas or in secluded bars, like to remember like what our elders went through. And then even before that, our two-spirit elders who didn't make it beyond, colonizers, landing here and wiping them out. So like, I think that we really need to always kind of remember where we've been and where our communities and where our ancestors who are guiding us, where they have been, so that we can continue to appreciate all the things that we have now. And yeah, but I also think it's kind of a beautiful thing, right? When you're doing things right as a parent or as a community, that your kids don't have to worry about the things that you had to worry about.
Right.
Um, yeah, so it's that weird kind of catch-22
Yeah,
space, but yeah.
that's awesome. And I guess moving forward a little bit, now obviously you got to this place where you're ultimately, feeling more supported, and then also feeling like you can use your experience to give back to your community. Does, I guess, some of those early experiences in your life inform your work, and how you, I guess, apply some of those lessons and teachings to your work at IP3?
Yeah, I think in the last, it's kind of weird. I'm 42 years old. I'm really grateful to be 42. Um, and I had this conversation with you recently,
Yeah.
Nick, of just like um, one of the things that stuck in my head coming up was life expectancy. And I don't know why, but it's just like that one thing that always stuck with me. And hearing that like Native people have the lowest life expectancy out of all other people. And that little bit of information has always stuck with me from being a kid. And so, at that time, life expectancy for a grown Native male was like 35, which
Right.
is like ridiculously low, right? And so I always thought, and then like, with whatever health concerns I had, I was, epileptic as a child,
Mhm.
like have had some other things transitioning, and taking testosterone now, you add medicine and all these other hormones and shit to your body. And it also like gives you side effects and lowers your life expectancy. It's like you can take this now and you can be fully who you are, but you're increasing your chances for a heart attack and stroke. Awesome. you know so there's that give and take, right? But um yeah, life expectancy has always been something that is like stuck in my head for some reason. And so I never thought that I would live past my 20s. um and I did grow up in a rough place. There's a lot of alcoholism, a lot of drugs.
Right.
um and a lot of my cousins and pals that I grew up running with have since passed away. And so that reality, I always just thought like I'm never gonna make it to an elder status.
Hmm.
And so I just like be grateful for what I have and do what I can with this time, because it's gonna be short. um and knock on wood, I hope that it's not, whatever whatever
And
people do. uh
I'll,
you know but I'm still going at 42. I'm grateful for that. Getting into this weird space where I'm kind of fitting in that two-spirit elder realm, which is a little strange, because honestly, within the last 5 or 10 years, yeah, it's really been like me getting into the space of like, Asa, you're not a little Indian kid in the back of the room who needs to be quiet while all the adults are talking. Like, you have a voice in this now, and
uh,
you can help and support, and be of service. And so, yeah, it's trying to get my headspace into that of like, yeah, you're not a little kid anymore. You don't have to like be quiet in the back of the room. Like, that's how I thought
right.
when I was little. Like, kids need to hush. The
Yeah.
adults are working now.
Yeah.
Doing the important stuff. And so now it's like really just trying to wrap my head around that. Like, I I do have a voice beyond just the production that my body can put out. So that's really influenced like how I've done this work, and then just knowing like that I really do thrive in the behind the scenes work.
Yeah.
Um, and just like seeing the end result of people being happy or positively affected by whatever I'm helping work on. And then also that team aspect. Like, I never want to just be me leading or me in the way or me like making anything all like ASA centered. So I've really tried to set up everything, how I work, even in my personal life and like my side hustles, are always like, there's community involvement. There's like, how do I bring others in? How do I support others while I'm supporting
Right.
myself?
Right.
Um, it's always beyond myself. And so that's kind of what I've taken from that. And like, I didn't get here by myself. There was a lot of people supporting me, whether I knew it or not. Um, and so I always try to remember that like one of these people I love is including me in their daily prayers somewhere, whether I know it or not. And like, what a blessing that is. And
Right.
so just to keep it like, I'm not, even though I might get and be in those places where I feel lonely, um, I'm not alone in that. I'm not alone in those feelings. I'm not alone in the work that I'm doing. I'm not alone in identity. Like there's all these things where if we pause in a little bit of silence with ourselves, that we can see that there are so many more things going on right then in the same time that we're having hard moments. So I really try to rely on that too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I just going back to like a conversation, because we did have that conversation about kind of life expectancy in our communities, and I think that's it's the same for a lot of us that we get up into a certain age bracket and we're feeling like, okay, we don't got a lot of time left, and so I see in your work ethic, it's go go go. I know that you have a hard you have a hard time taking yourself away from the work.
Yeah.
um, and you're always always have your hands in something, and which is
Just
really cool.
calling me out.
I know, huh? It's like, dude, take a break. It's me. um, but yeah, no, that's really important, I think, to recognize that. Not only does that kind of fear and doubt, I guess, push us into the work that we're doing, and I guess remind us of the importance of it. Obviously, we've seen a lot of people just throughout history in our communities pushing for justice and in so many ways. So it's really cool to see how your experience kind of informed your work and then pushes you to work really, really hard when doing this. And that kind of brings me into the next question here is as far as like resistance work. Obviously, we work in a space where we're pushing for restoration, reclamation, land back, and obviously, your life and your experiences have led you to this place. Um, so maybe you can speak a little bit where IP3 is now and some of your work in like resistance work.
Yeah, definitely. I always say that I feel like, I feel like most of us were born into this work, whether we know it or not. But I definitely feel like I was born into this work specifically because of my people and my tribe. Uh, in the 50s, there was a termination thing that went across the United States to various tribes, and my tribe was one of those that was impacted. So in 1958, my tribe was terminated. We were no longer seen as tribal members or Klamath people. And I was born in 1980, so that means that I was born as not a tribal member. And we didn't get our restoration until 1984. So,
Right.
yeah, just like the historical traumas, the historical impacts of termination on my tribe. We that termination was, a giant land grab, like a lot of other things were
Right.
in our histories as tribes. And so I feel like, colonization has born all of us into this resistance work. Um, and some of us do a deep dive into it. And, some of us view that as kind of like our rent in this life. And I'm definitely one of those people. Um, and so I've been working on various projects throughout my whole life. I've seen these water wars where we are, and they still continue to this day, where we're we're fighting for our rights and our treaty rights and our water rights. Um, and, we should have, first say on those things. And oftentimes we're fighting, ranchers and um, uh, yeah, farmers down in Klamath Basin uh, for that water. And so, and then the life of our lake, the life of our fish. We had a really big win with the dams that are going to be taken off the Klamath River,
Yeah.
thankfully, just recently. So that's a huge thing. But yeah, I feel like this work has begun with birth, at birth,
Yeah.
and being an Indigenous person. And then yeah, there's been various things that I've worked on throughout my lifetime. And then like a couple well-known things were like the no LNG here in Oregon, which was also defeated after like 10, 15 years of work from community. And so I'm really proud of the communities that have come together to say, no, we're not going to allow this to happen. And we're going to fight you tooth and nail every step of the way. and meet you at every tactic and strategy that you come with. And so that was a really big win for our state and for our communities, and a project that was going to go through, my homelands and other homelands here in Oregon. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, it was just, that was a big win for us. And, just been working on community projects because I love art and make art. Like, I've used my art in a lot of these, actions or resistance work that have gone on throughout my life. And so that's where I kind of feel like um, my talents or gifts come into play and where I can help out. And then, yeah, with IP3, it was that call to action that I heard at Standing Rock and being there with other folks. And what I really appreciate about IP3 anyway is that we say that we don't participate in parachute activism. So
Mhm.
we don't jump into other communities that are not ours and, claim to be like, we're going to help fix this problem now,
Right.
or we're going to help, do this, or um, we really wait and follow, wait to be called on, and then follow local indigenous leadership on the ground who's already started the work. Many of these communities have been fighting these things for years and decades. And so to come in brand new and fresh and be like, we're going to fix the problem,
Right.
that's the opposite of what we want to be doing.
Yeah.
And so we want to see how we can build capacity, and help, uh, support the work that's already been started on the ground. Um, so that when we leave community, what we've left is the knowledge and information that we have that we can share. And then also, we try to come in with more questions than answers,
Right.
and we learn a lot in the process, which those are things I really love about IP3, is that we're not coming in to solve anything. We're coming in to add what we know, and then we end up leaving with so much more
Right.
from the experience. And so, yeah, that jumping off point for me with IP3 was definitely in Standing Rock. um, and meeting all these people, making the connections with these people, and and then the magic that happened in that art space was something that I've been trying to replicate ever since. And I just it's a moment in time that was just that, a moment of time, and that I think lives with all of us who were in that art tent, in that space. But it's something that will kind of just always be that, and not whatever we can replicate. But
Because it
me
is.
wanting to,
It's well in the communities that we're helping, right?
yeah, definitely, yeah, there were that was the beautiful thing about that space. It was like a 10 by 20 tent in the frigid cold, and you were sharing elbow space with professional working artists, international artists, local community artists, people who claimed they weren't artists but were making beautiful art. So it was an amazing space. And then, seeing your work in live time, seeing your work go international on social media in a matter of, minutes, hours. Um, it was pretty special, and to be able to like participate and support in that way, and trying our best, to get whatever wins that we could.
Right.
It's heartbreaking because these pipelines are in effect, oil's running through them and oil's spilling from them. We just saw that last week with the spill in Kansas, and so this work continues, and
Yeah.
we have other things going on with IP3 too, the other communities that we're supporting and have been supportive of, and we want to continue to support new communities. That's one thing too that you know, we're right now we're pretty small. In staff, we only have 4 staff, and we have a network of about 20 trainers, and so we're always growing. And if people out there are interested in getting involved with IP3, we would love to meet them. We would love to know what's going on in their communities. We would love to know how we can support those communities. We're thankful that we got to support the people of Red Mountain this year with Protect Pahimaha, or Thacker
Hmm.
Pass. So that's a proposed lithium mine in Nevada, which will just devastate their homelands.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of different local animals and plants and food that only grows in that area.
Right.
Uh, and I can relate because, our fish, our Schwam and Koptu right now are endangered, and they are also only found in Klamath Lake.
Right.
So I can definitely relate to like that loss. It will be culturally devastating to all of our people who are experiencing that. And so, yeah, that's the thing that I want people to think about, is just that, like, how big these things are. They seem, little, or another problem to deal with later, or we get so comfortable, with our big screen TVs and our SUVs or whatever we have available to us. But these things are really culturally devastating to us.
Right.
IP3
Well,
wants to.
you had mentioned the Klamath water crisis issue, and IP3, going down there to help with creative resistance. What does that work look like when we're obviously in Klamath, which is your hometown, or those areas? What does that work look like? What was it like working with and for the Klamath Tribes and the Klamath water crisis? And what does that creative resistance work look like, and how we bring that to other communities to help support in other communities?
Yeah, I was really grateful to be able to go down and support my own tribe in this work. And that's the first time, believe it or not, that I've ever done anything like that with my tribe. Besides, being part of some of the actions and stuff that we had down there, but to be able to bring resources into community and create art with my community was such a beautiful experience. And people, are reluctant to get involved in some of these actions, and unfortunately, like, where I come from down there, it can be a very violent place. Like, people don't just yell at you. People don't just like tell you their opinions.
Right.
Send you a strongly worded email. They take out their guns and shoot, and they want to physically fight. And so, I think in that way, a lot of people were reluctant to get involved. And then when I came down there with art supplies, they're like, "Wait, what are you doing?"
Mm-hmm.
And we screen printed, we made banners, we made personal signs, car signs, and we had a group of about 30 people making art, which was really awesome. And then the next day was the action that we did, where we did a caravan into town and into the head gates of the river. And yeah, it was over 70 people ended up showing up. So it was just really amazing to see how the community built from that one art build, and how many people showed up. And then there ended up being a gathering after that with food, and then the tribe's biologist got to talk about the importance of the fish, the Schwam and Koptu, and what's going on with them, and just how much we are impacting the lake and the river there,
Right.
and just the health of those fish, and how the health of those fish determine the health of the people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it was really amazing. And I feel that way with everything that we're a part of, though. Going down and being in community with people of Red Mountain, and talking about Thacker Pass, we were able to support Coyote Band of Pomo, amazing people with a big fight on their hands too. It's the community connections that we make, continue to live and thrive. And it's so great to see people, as they get their wins, and as they build capacity for themselves, to be able to build out these campaigns or do this work in their own communities. It's pretty amazing to see how much we can do when we're empowered and we're working together.
Right. And for those who aren't, I guess, familiar with the situation, maybe you can share a little bit about some of the recent news, especially for the Klamath Tribes. And now, obviously, IP3's art actions and helping there with a creative resistance piece is just a very small piece of this huge effort that goes back generations, right? But just, I guess, for IP3 to help in that process, to see the work through and help support the community is just so powerful. And for me, I guess, to witness it and watch everything unfold. But maybe you can kind of explain a little bit, like some of the recent wins, I guess, we're celebrating as tribal people and the Klamath Tribes are celebrating.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the dam removal being signed off on, it's it's funny because it was such a historic event and news and signing, and since then there have been, press conferences with Deb Haaland and our governor here, Kate Brown, in the state and tribal members, and it's so emotional and moving. But I feel like a lot of us, because I've had time to talk to some of my cousins and friends and family members, I think that some of us are still like, we'll believe it when we see it. So it's unfortunate that it's like such a big historic thing, but we're still kind of on the edge of our chairs of like, we'll celebrate when the dams are down. We'll celebrate when the water's flowing. We'll celebrate when our salmon come back, because our salmon have not, like, I've had a lifetime of no salmon
Right.
in the river, and so to see what that looks like and to see the cultural significance of that return to our people is huge. It's like beyond any words I can put together. But it's unfortunate that most of us are just like, yeah, we'll
I
see.
know. Yeah. Many,
And I feel like a lot of people have that, right? Like a lot of people go through that experience of just like, okay, yeah, we'll see what this is, and it's always, yeah, it's always just kind of waiting.
right. Yeah, no, I mean, it's obviously easy with as many things that have been taken and how they've affected our families, our elders and ancestors. Like, I don't know, I'm pretty skeptical as well when it comes to a lot of the promises that are made but never followed through with. And we were talking on our way back from California recently about that day that they take that first dam down. I don't know if it's going to be like a controlled demolition or what it is, but man, it'll be a sight to see when it happens.
For sure.
Um, anyway, moving forward, and for those of you out there that are joining us, we officially have a staff meeting in about 9 minutes.
We're good.
So, in respect of your time and the staff's time, everybody's time, we're going to move it forward a little bit here, Asa. Outside of all your work, what is it that you love to do for fun? What do you do to unwind?
Wow.
I don't even know. Me.
Yeah, what is that like?
I know.
Um, no, in all honesty, yeah. Art for sure. You can see behind me, like these are some of my paintings, some of the things I do. So,
Yeah.
art is that like reciprocal relationship that continually feeds me and yeah, helps me through life. And I don't feel like I'm really great with words, and so art's amazing in that way that I feel like I don't have to speak for it. It just speaks for itself.
Right.
Um, and yeah, just to step back on that last question too with creative resistance, like, I've been a creative resistance or arts trainer with IP3 the longest out of any position with them. And, we in IP3, we train NVDA, so nonviolent direct action, creative resistance, climbing, blockades, and, we're starting to offer some other things as well, including wellness and how to take care of ourselves and our bodies, food sovereignty, how to like prevent burnout and be culturally connected, right? Because we want to look at ourselves in this work as bringing our whole selves in, and if we're not taking care of those things, if we're not taking care of our mental health, if we're not taking care of our bodies, like, we're not going to last very long in this work that ends up being really taxing on all of our systems. um, but yeah, just to go back to creative resistance, like, that's what brought me into this world. Or into this work. That's what really keeps me going in this work and replenishes me. And it's so important. Like with Standing Rock, for the first time, not for the first time, but one of like the first times in a social media world and globally, and in that instant kind of scroll culture that we have, we were getting to see ourselves represented in that movement space
Yeah.
for one of the first times in that way. And so it's really powerful and important for people doing this work to see themselves represented, to see and own the messaging and be the ones in charge of the narrative, right?
Yeah.
In those spaces, we got to say, this is who we are, this is what we're doing. Um, and this is how we're doing it. And then that art got to be that visual voice of that movement space and continues to be. And it's so powerful and so important, and really, like, I'm gonna push art because I'm an arts trainer, but get it artists involved, and try to squash that whatever voice in your head that tells you you're not an artist. I think
Yeah.
we all have artists inside of us, and we're all creative at some point. But we need artists in these movement spaces at every level, so that we're owning that narrative and creating that visual voice for these spaces. I think it's so important. And in the end, when we're doing these actions, whether it's big NGOs that have huge budgets that are able to drop giant banners off giant bridges and all these things, or a small group of people locked down to a bank door, like at the end of the day, a lot of the things that you remember from those actions are the art. And
Yeah.
so that art stuff is really like those art pieces are really important in this work. And so
Yeah.
I hope that everybody is getting some artists involved in at every level of what you're working on.
Absolutely. And I know we've talked about this before, but like, a lot of these corporations that are out there destroying and taking, these are corporations with, multi-million dollar budgets that are advertising on TV their agenda. They have teams of marketing people behind them. And I guess when it comes to being in these actions, these spaces, the art is a big piece of the voice, and it's so, so powerful. We've seen Standing Rock as an example, people putting together art and these pieces that change the world. And so, absolutely, that is definitely very important for artists of all mediums to get involved, for sure. And then real quick, it was kind of a segue into the next question here. What's on the dreamscape for IP3 and your work, and how can people get involved to support and help uplift the work?
Yeah, totally. So like everybody else, we've been deeply impacted by this pandemic, which is still going on. So yeah, our work really changed because all of our work was person to person. It was being in space and in community with folks. And so we had to pivot and figure out what that looked like online and virtual world. So we did the best we could. Thankfully, we were just, coming into this 501c3 process, like coming out of it. And so figuring out what it looks like to be a nonprofit and how we can indigenize that even,
Mm-hmm.
because these spaces weren't meant for us.
Yeah.
And they're not perfect by any means, but they're a tool that we can use to maneuver funding and build space for our communities. So, we're doing the best with what we have to work with, and we're really trying to keep it Indigenous centered in all the work that we do. And grassroots as much as possible, and that we want these funds to not, go to, like behind the scenes stuff that nobody sees. Like all of our funding goes to support and resources for these communities
Right.
to build capacity. And so that's what we're really proud of. And we're really proud that we're also, for the first time, becoming self-sustainable as an organization.
Yeah.
So in the past, we haven't had big budgets to buy gear for ourselves. And so, we've just gotten by with what we could and borrowed gear from bigger nonprofits, which we're really thankful for. But sometimes, especially in pandemic times,
Mm-hmm.
people stop loaning stuff out because of fear of, what could happen to the gear, or if, COVID exists on material items and for how long. And so, yeah, so the pandemic really changed our work. And we're just now getting into spaces where we're having in-person events again,
Yeah.
so 2023 really looks like our first year, hopefully, of normal programming, whatever that is. And so we haven't had an annual action camp since 2019. And so we're hopeful that we can get back to an action camp this coming year, and then, get in the swing of our training for trainers programming,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can build up new trainers. And so, people out there, if you're interested in becoming a creative resistance trainer with us in our network, or a blockades trainer, or a climb trainer, or NVDA trainer, we would love to have you and love to have your involvement. And definitely look us up if you have, actions that are going on in your communities, projects that, you guys are working on, for whatever kind of, work or devastation or, extraction projects that are going on in your area, and you want support on either how to put a training together, how to build a camp, resources and tools to speak with your communities, we would love to be that support network for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that we're growing in our capacity constantly is the multitude of ways that we can be supportive in our community. So can we offer technical assistance by phone, Zoom, email? Yes, and so reach out if you need those things. If you need us or would like us to come to your community to do a training or even some action camp type stuff, you could submit a training request with us on our website. So that's ip3action.org. We would love to hear from you. And then if you want to email us, please email us at info@ip3action.org. And yeah, we're looking forward to, continuing the relationships that we've started in the last couple of years with some of the training requests that we've been supporting, and some of the new partnerships that we'll make in this next year with new training requests. And that's the beauty of it, is like, it's not a one and done thing, right? It's people don't just submit a training request, we come out, we train in VDA and then leave.
Yeah.
We're building these relationships, and we're constantly checking in with people, who we've provided trainings for or action camp stuff with, or any kind of support, just to see how they're doing, if they need follow-up, how we can be of support, like continued support with them, whether that's offering our IG, whether that's interviewing them as part of our Skoden Talks with the Homies series, if that's, building out curriculum and working collaboratively that way. Like, we just want to be of service to the community and help people where they're at. And, whatever we can share, we definitely want to share. And we're definitely open to all the learning experiences that these training requests provide for us too, because it's twofold. Like, we're getting back what we give in or put in, and that's really exciting and definitely one of the things that keeps me going in this work.
Absolutely. Well, Asa, we're just about out of time, but thank you for sharing your time with us today and letting us know and letting everybody know. I mean, I know, probably more than a lot of our viewers today, but it's definitely appreciated. For everybody that's tuning in, as Asa was explaining, you can also always check us out at ip3action.org. We'll rebroadcast this episode on our YouTube. We have a variety of other videos there on our YouTube as well as all of our socials, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. If you'd like to support IP3 Actions work, feel free to check us out on our socials, like, share, subscribe, all of the stuff, right? But we just wanted to thank you all for your time today. Sage, get well. Hope you are okay, you and your family.
Yeah, lots of love, Sage. Thank you, Nick, for jumping in last minute. You did great. I know you were worried.
Yeah, I'm still shaking. I don't know if anybody can tell. But...
It was great. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Look forward to seeing you.
All right, everybody. See you next time.